Guys, I'm gonna be honest with you, I have an addiction. I'm coming clean with you today. I'm just gonna come out and say it. I never thought in my life that I would come to a point where I was literally addicted to XXL size pocket knives. But I'm just gonna own it. I'm gonna say it's a problem, but it's a problem that I'm okay with. I'm okay with living with the problem because I now have with me the Cold Steel Rajah 2. And it's been a blast. It's so ridiculous, but it has been a blast to rock this Cold Steel folding kukri. It's basically a folding machete. I don't know how else to describe it. We're talking about a 6-inch blade. We're talking about an 8-inch handle. So 14 inches overall profile when it's unleashed like this. Triad locking mechanism. It weighs 13 ounces. I mean, this thing is a monster. Today we're gonna have a blast in the Blade Boot Camp, thrashing on this thing. I've taken it now through South Texas, foliage and dense undergrowth, then into Alabama, and now I'm in Florida and have spent a bunch of time in rural areas going through all kinds of stuff. And guys, it is so much fun, and I'm super excited to take you along for the ride, show you what this has going on. I mean, what are some of the aspects? There are some downfalls to it that I wish were tweaked or maybe just kind of slightly different, but there is, I believe, a class and a group of people that are just gonna go, I have to have this tool. I don't really know what I'm gonna do with it, but I have to have it. All right, we got to start with the blade and the business end. As I said, 6 inches, actual cutting edge is more like 5.5. There's a slight dull point before the edge geometry actually starts, and you have the actual edge. Good relief edge. Cold Steel is kind of known for that. Most of their blades I've ever gotten have a great factory edge on it. This was no exception. With a full flat grind into a 0.19 thickness. So I mean, this is over 3/16 of an inch thick with a really robust spine down to a pretty good reinforced tip, meaning that it's just thicker than you might expect for a full flat grind. And so this is just an overbuilt tool. So you might be like, okay, well, is it kind of like just thick and not really fun to use? Wrong. I would actually say the first thing that I did, and I actually use almost every day now, is for food prep. This thing is a food prep champ. I love, because of its size and reach and the full flat grind, its capability processing larger vegetables and fruit, being able to cut up meats and all the rest. I mean, it is excellent as a camp food knife. So if you like the idea of the tool, that's a great application right out of the gate. It would be amazing around your camp kitchen or just your home kitchen. Maybe the barbecue, out back, you have a kind of a hangout area. That would be phenomenal. So it's a fantastic food prep tool on every level, from vegetables and fruit to the softer stuff like tomatoes, and then even meats and those type of things. It's just so much fun to use in that capacity. A lot of it has to do with that full flat grind. But then second comes the finer tasks just in general. How about like going through man-made materials? Excellent. I was really surprised. It did cardboard like nothing. It did really well with cardboard, and it did great with like rubber and foam and cordage and all the rest. A lot of that has to do with the recurve, and we'll talk about resharpening a recurve here momentarily, because I know that can be intimidating for some people. You're like, I like the idea, but I mean, recurves are kind of intimidating for me to resharpen. I'll touch on that in just a moment. But that recurve is accelerating the cut because the edge is moving. It's not like a straight edge. It's sweeping at every single point of contact, making it very easy to go through those man-made materials. And then if you're trying to do more of a woodscraft aspect to it, you're doing carving and whittling and making notches and those type of things, you can get really nice carving with that closer up towards the handle portion. And then you can also have that huge belly to be able to do, say, a notch, and you're making a square cut, or a rounded cut. You're, shaping the wood and you want some control because of how thick and how flat the spine is, no swedge or anything. You can really put some leverage with your thumb and really carve out what you need to and do those finer woodscraft tasks without any issue. And then really, what about like, and this is where maybe for a lot of people this would make a lot of sense. Say you own a lot of property. Right now I'm on some property and it's like there's greenery everywhere. And so you're just walking your property and you're gonna need to like trim off some branches that you missed, or maybe you work as someone who is a tree trimmer, or landscaping. And greenery, particularly like green foliage, is something that you encounter a lot and need to control a lot and cut. have at it, man. This thing is going to slice through that greenery no problem, because again of the reach, the size of the blade, you're able to contact stuff very easily, and then the recurve helps accelerate through those things. And so greenery, brush, hanging vines, I mean, one swing, it's gone. Green foliage that's about as thick as your thumb on down is going to be very easy. So let's say an inch. Let's say an inch in diameter or less. If it's alive and green and you're trying to remove it, or maybe it just died and you're trying to shape it, you'll be able to do that all day long with this tool. So I mean, that's just phenomenal, and I love it. Now obviously I don't recommend using, you know, knives as weapons, but if you know what you're doing, or you're trained, or that's what you're looking for, or an emergency situation, this thing has the reach, the piercing capability, the slashing to really cause some damage. And it has that capability. And if you are in certain areas, I've done some walks with my dog in very rural areas where we've run into some stray dogs and just different stuff that, like, but I knew that might be a possibility. I had this with me in an emergency situation. It would be better than not. Now this is made in Taiwan out of AUS-10A steel. It's awesome that cold steel has transitioned over to that in recent years. I really like the steel. I found that it's very tough. It's rather easy to put an edge back on, and it's about 20% better at edge retention than AUS-8. So if you're familiar with AUS-8, you're getting about a 20% upgrade in edge retention. Now on to resharpening real briefly. Recurves can be intimidating. What I have found is the narrower your sharpening stone, rod, whatever is, the easier it is to resharpen these so that you have full contact of the edge on your sharpening instrument. So rods are ideal. So ceramic and diamond coated rods will be very easy to put an edge back on this. If you have maybe, like, say, an inch or less of sharpening stone width, that will be ideal. And I was able to get good contact with, say, my Work Sharp field sharpener. Easily was able to put an edge back on this, hone it very nicely, and it does really well. And so as long as you just use a narrower, preferably, maybe if you're new to this, start with rods and work your way into some stones, you should easily be able to maintain a recurve, and you get all of the benefits that a recurve gives you with very few of any of the drawbacks, and it's still easy to put an edge back on from my experience, and that's why I enjoy recurves. All right, so how about this monstrous handle? I mean, this is about as big as any survival knife I've ever tested and or used, not only in its full dimensions, but in its length as well. So I mean, this is one beefy tool, and it gives you 3 distinct grips. So the first one is gonna be your choke up grip. There's not like a dedicated choil, but this has been scalloped in here on either side up front, which allows you then to grip and use your index finger right there to get nice and close to the edge, and your thumb is able to rest right there on the deployment pad, and then you're able to do the cuts and the movements that you would need to really get your finer work done. Now, if you back up, that's really where the general grip is. You have almost a double high finger guard. You can see they're twice as high as my first. Locking in, really good, that grivery texture that we know from cold steel. So that's a medium grit. It doesn't feel like sandpaper, but it's not like slick, say like a Becker, BK2 out of the gate, where it's just, there's no texture. This is excellent right there. So you are locked in, and that's where you're gonna be able to do your general movements. You could not only do light hacks, but just your normal cutting tasks. And if you are using this as a self-defense tool, if you end up doing that, this is where you're going to grip the tool, because you're gonna be super locked in and you're not gonna accidentally ride up and hurt yourself. Then finally, you have your back up grip. They give you this cut in right here, nice and rounded everywhere with kind of a flare out the back. When you grip that thing, you're locked into place, and that gives you about 3 more inches of overall reach. So you could do that and use it if you need to, and you're definitely locked into place. But the best part is it's not gonna go flying out of your hand. You don't even need a lanyard on this. I haven't used it, even with all of the hacking. And that's really where you're gonna be able to do the large motor skill movements, slashing, swinging. This is where I would grip it if I'm doing delimbing of greenery, vines and hedges and that type of thing, or just doing hacking of shaping of wood, those type of things. It's going to give you a really good grip. It doesn't give any shock into my hand and feels very natural. I actually wish bigger like choppers would kind of follow suit sometimes with this because it just feels really organic in the hand. The only area in this grip is where the pocket clip is. You are gripping the pocket clip, you know, so you can feel it kind of shifting. It doesn't create that hot spot, but it is something that you just kind of feel. And if that is how you're just using it most of the time, it might make more sense to take off the pocket clip, and because it's so big, you know, just get either a pouch or just dump it in your pocket, because there you do feel it when it's back here, and then if you're just swinging constantly and that's kind of how you use the tool, it might make sense to remove the pocket clip. But other than that, this has those 3 distinct grips, giving you 3 distinct capabilities with this massive folder. The strength is there as well. It is going to have those liners, steel liners in there. I believe that's what I see. Sometimes people say it's aluminum. I believe it's steel. When I look on the websites, usually that's what they say. So steel liners in there, and so the rigidness is throughout the handle as well, giving it strength. And that takes us right into action, which is insanely smooth for how big this tool is. And right out of the gate, this did not have any sticking. I know sometimes I probably own 20 to 30 cold steels at this point, and I would say 10 of them, so maybe 30%. The lock back is pretty sticky for a few days. So if you get a model that's like that, I mean, I would literally had to like pound it on the back of a counter a couple times to get it to release, and you just got to give it some elbow grease and work it in. This was not the case. Buttery smooth right out of the gate. And after all the thumping, all the beating, rock solid, because it has this massive stop pin right there. I mean, that thing is like about as thick as a pencil. You can see just how big that is. And then it does have the triad locking mechanism, locks it into place. The bar is recessed below the handle scales a little bit on mine. And most of my other cold steels don't do that. I don't know if it's just the model and the design they decided to go with. I don't know if like some come that way, some don't. I'm not quite sure. But there is definitely like a lip right there. So I would have preferred, you know, to not have that. I would have been preferred to have it completely flush. Totally functions, there's no issues. It's just, you know, like a little thing you notice when you're looking at the blade, but totally does that, disengages. Now the locking mechanism, you know, there's the torsion bar in there, but the locking mechanism stops right here. It's not like a massive lock bar. It is super thick, as thick as the blade itself. So I did pound on it, but I was a little more nervous than some of my other cold steels just because of where it stops and how much more handle there is. It hasn't loosened up, hasn't done anything. I would not baton with it unless you were in a pinch and you absolutely had to, but I did whack with this thing a ton, and it's super solid. There's no, you know, wobbling. There's no issues, you know, with any of that. And so you could definitely do some much harder woods work with it if necessary, and it should hold up for quite a while. I'm seeing it just keep on trucking with no problems in sight. So how about pricing? What does this normally go for? Now, Cold Steel did hook me up with this tool so I could test it out, use it, and give you guys my feedback, what I like about it. Are there any drawbacks? So you guys can make the choice. Is this something to throw in rotation, use, gift, you know, have, or not? So with this guy, normally it goes from, I've seen it as low as about $82 on Amazon, and I've seen it for about $110 on Blade HQ, which is bananas. To be made in Taiwan with the steel and just the physical size and the materials that go into this and all the moving parts and everything. For, let's just say, split the difference, $100. $100, you're getting this size folder is kind of mind-boggling. I'm not quite sure how they're doing that, and this is early 2022 that I'm filming this. So, I mean, that is crazy. That is some value, in my opinion, for what you're getting, because you can often get like AUS-10, you know, blades that are not even half the size from even Cold Steel that are around that same price. So that's pretty impressive that they're able to get that in the market for that. So we're gonna have a bunch of links for you guys below: Blade HQ, GP Knives, Smoky Mountain Knife Works, Amazon, so you guys can take a look if this is something that makes sense for you. I don't really have anything on hand that's a competitive option. The one that I was thinking of that I reviewed, I believe a year or two ago, was the Gerber Double Down. Now that's an American-made, kind of like butterfly style, you know, swooping tool. Now in concept, it's pretty cool. 420 high carbon, doesn't hold the edge like this AUS-10, but it has a really cool blade shape, works really well, made in America in the sense of the blade. It really comes down to the handle. The handle is not comfortable. It was pinching my hand. It was kind of starting to want to like unclasp itself with the lock, and then the choke up portion position was really boxy, and I don't feel like it needed to be. So it was just not super ergonomic. The blade itself was actually really high performing, but it was just not fun to hold, not fun to carry. Didn't come with a pocket clip. It only came with a nylon pouch. And it's about 150 bucks. So that's really the only competitive option I can give to you. But if you were to now having both, if you're like, which one would you carry? I'm like all the time, dude. Like this one is actually pocket carryable. The edge retention is much better. The food prepping, you know, and like all that, and the ergonomics are way better than say the Gerber double down. So I believe that's what it is, the Gerber double down. Anyway, so that's really the only competitive option in the size range of a folding machete, basically, that I can offer to you to kind of think about and consider. All right, so how about this monstrous pocket clip here? Now, it's classic for cold steel. This is a completely ambidextrous blade, but you do have two separate pocket clips. This pocket clip, you can't just swap and bring it over here. It might swing and just barely stay on there, but it comes with a second pocket clip. I prefer just one pocket clip I can swap, then I don't have to keep track of another pocket clip. What if I want to give this away to somebody who's left-handed, or one day I want to sell it, and maybe or maybe not, I can keep track of that pocket clip. Totally does what it's supposed to. It's black, so it's not going to be as visible. That's a big benefit. It has fit over every single pair of pants I've worn, as well as waistbands, because I think a lot of people would actually end up carrying this in your waistband just because of how big and monstrous it is. And you're looking at like 2.5 inches from the ride. So I mean, it's super easy to grab, and particularly with like work gloves, big leather, bulky work gloves, or mittens for snow, you know, that type of stuff. So if you are using this around a property, you know, whatever your career, your activity, taking care of your home, you know, whatever, requires just a lot of use with work gloves, this would be very easy to pull in and out of your pocket and deploy in that way. So that's all a benefit. The only downside is I wish that they had cut in around the pivot up here for the pocket clip. I've had to tighten it down twice now, and it's just because it's such a big clip. You know, if you're hacking, there's just a lot of shock going on. If it was recessed in a little bit right here, like some of Cold Steel's other much larger designs, that would have just made it so it sat a little bit better in there and less likely for it to kind of rock back and forth. Not a deal killer by any means, and you can remove it as well. I think a lot of people would remove this and just carry it loosely in your pocket, or get a little nylon pouch. I think it would be awesome if it actually came with one. I think a lot of people might carry it that way. So guys, obviously in most scenarios, just a fixed blade makes more sense to go with a dedicated machete, you know, go with a dedicated survival knife, fixed blade, you know, it's just gonna make more sense. And, you know, for about that price point, 100 bucks, you can obviously get a lot of fixed blades, but you get so much tool, and it has such a crazy capability. I never thought I would actually, you know, put it in my regular rotation, but I'm using it quite a bit for different activities, and it's good to have, and I enjoy having it around. And it's become a fun tool. It's just a party trick, man. Throw it to your buddies and be like, hey man, check this blade out. What on earth, you know, is what you got. But then you can actually go out and use it, and it's not just some novelty piece. So I hope this video has been fun, entertaining. I'll do my best to answer any questions that you guys may have. Throw a comment below, like, subscribe if you're not yet a subscriber, and check out the other video popping up. And until next time, always remember, stay equipped, stay prepared. I'll see you out there.